All right, and we back. Going to talk a little bit about the NBA. The NBA playoffs are right around the corner, but the best part of the season is always the offseason. No, I'm just kidding. But we're going to talk about some potential trades going into next season that I think would make sense for teams, especially a lot of teams that aren't in the playoffs and or have assets that aren't going to help them on their next iteration of their championship team. The financial stuff is less likely going to work in this scenario, and it's more likely going to be about just getting the framework of the deal done, and then, you can make the financial trade restrictions happen from there. Going to start with Mark Williams from Charlotte. Obviously, Charlotte already tried to trade Mark Williams. We're going to trade him this time to another Eastern Conference team, to the New York Knicks. The return would be Mitchell Robinson, 2 second-round picks. Listen, the Knicks could love to have a consistent runner. And they might want to fill that role with a cheaper, more reliable option than Robinson. Obviously, Mitchell Robinson having a lot of injury concerns over the last couple of years. Williams is still on his rookie deal. He has another year left on that. And even though he does have his own injury issues, he's going to play 41 games this season, or he has, at the time of this recording, which is already more than Robinson will, and more than he's played in 2 of the last 4 years. And the Hornets, obviously, they're willing to let Williams go, but maybe you get someone back in return that can fill that same role, right? Robinson can do the same things. Theoretically, he just, the availability hasn't been there. This is a chance for Charlotte to buy low on him and getting a couple second-round picks as well. Jabari Smith has been talked about a lot out of Houston. We're going to go big with this trade. I think the Phoenix Suns, and you know where this is going, would love Jabari Smith, right? I think Phoenix would get, in this trade, Jalen Green, Jabari Smith, Cam Whitmore, 2 first-round picks for Devin Booker. Yeah, you thought I was going to say Kevin Durant, but no, for Devin Booker, right? The Suns, they're in need of an organizational overhaul, and few teams are more equipped to do it than the Houston Rockets, right? Both Green, Smith, and Whitmore all have building block potential, and if their return is Booker, Houston might be willing to give up 2 of Phoenix's firsts that they currently control. The Rockets are truly a full-fledged star away from title contention, at least to me. And, maybe Devin Booker is not that guy, but I think he would be a good fit in Houston. He's been talked about in Houston a lot. He might not be having his best season, but obviously he has the skills and the stature to seize control of this Houston attack and push it toward title contention. Back to the teams that aren't going to be in the playoffs. Nick Claxton and the Brooklyn Nets, right? I think the Lakers would love Nick Claxton, right? I think this would be for, a Rui, a Dalton Connect. You've already shown that you're willing to go get a center, and you've already shown that you're willing to give up Dalton Connect. I think you'd have to give up a couple of picks, probably a future unrestricted than a pick swap, but I think that would get it done. A defense with LeBron, Luka, and Austin Reeves, they need paint protection. And offensively, they could use a rim runner like Nick Claxton, a much better defender than Jackson Hayes. And on top of it, he's about to finish top 10 in blocks per game for the 3rd time in 6 seasons. And for the Nets, getting assets for a guy in Nick Claxton, who, at this point, you're not going to compete for a championship. They really don't have blue chip talent, and maybe Dalton Connect isn't that guy, but he scratches an itch, and you get 2 future first-round picks. I think that'd be huge. Staying in Brooklyn, obviously Cam Johnson. I think Cam Johnson would be a great fit next to Cade Cunningham in Detroit. I think it would just take probably Tobias Harris and a couple of lightly protected firsts from Detroit. And for the Pistons, you have the momentum going forward, and Detroit's decision makers should feel empowered to fuel this effort. And it's not like Cam Johnson is old. He is, I think 27 at this point. And he's not going to be the second star next to Cade Cunningham, I think. But he's a tremendous role player. He can be a much better complement to Cade Cunningham and Tobias Harris. He's a much better shooter, much better defender, and he's younger. And again, Brooklyn, they're as far removed from contention as possible. Getting anything for the players you have on this team, especially the guys that aren't going to be here on the next iteration of the theoretical championship contending Brooklyn Nets, is super important. And to me, slow, steady, sustainable growth feels like the best path forward, like they did before. And I think this would help that happen. I think the Blazers would love a guy like Lauri Markkanen, right? Lauri Markkanen, obviously in Utah on a mega deal, can't be traded till this offseason anyways. But I think Portland, putting Lauri next to that guard rotation, I think it would only take, some more of those Portland vets, right? Jeremy Grant, Robert Williams. I think you would have to part ways with a couple first-round picks. 2, let's just say 2. But Portland was much better than most people anticipated, much better than I anticipated. Let's make that very clear. If they're bullish about their young guards, maybe a front court upgrade like Lauri Markkanen is the missing piece. He would be a good fit next to Denny Avdia and Donovan Clingan. So he would fit very cleanly right into that 4 spot. And even if for the Jazz, listen, Lauri Markkanen is on a different timeline from the rest of this roster, and he will probably not be on the Utah Jazz the next time they're in title contention. If you could get 2 firsts for him, especially giving the money he's owed in the seasons he's had, that would be a huge, huge win. And at the end of the day, Grant's got a big contract. It's not as big. Williams is an injury risk. You're not getting much from him. You just trade him. Fuck it. Next up, I want to talk about a guy who's similarly made 1 All-Star game in LaMelo Ball. I think you need to find a team for him that he can supercharge their offensive attack or at least boost it. Orlando, we've talked about it before. I think Orlando give up someone like Anthony Black, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, a couple first-round picks. Again, Orlando needs an offensive jolt badly, right? You're willing to trade for this guy, and hope that he can stay on the floor and hope he can impact winning. But damn, he can fucking score, right? He's got elite vision in the arena, or excuse me, in the gym range. And you hope that his shooting rates would go up, given the fact that defense would have to worry about him, Paulo, on Franz Wagner. And then for the Hornets, listen, LaMelo's been in Charlotte for 5 years. He has yet to make the playoffs. And they're probably going to post, if not one of the worst win rates they've had with him on the team. They should have serious doubts about his ability to lead this team. And this team's regime, in terms of like who the GM of this team, it's changed in the last 2 years. So they might not be married to LaMelo Ball. Another guy who cannot stay on the floor, Zion Williamson. We're going to trade him in this theoretical scenario to a team that could, use a true second star, the Detroit Pistons. I think if you could get him, I think Zion would be, Tobias Harris for salary, Rob Holland, Bobby Clinton, and maybe a future first-round pick. It's obvious that Detroit needs a future co-star, but you don't know how good they're going to be after it, right? Getting a discounted Zion Williamson might be the perfect middle ground for both Detroit and for New Orleans. If Detroit can keep him upright, they're suddenly one of the league's top young tandems. And if it doesn't, they still have enough trade assets left over to return to the market. Now, the Pelicans, maybe you want to run it back for next year because the injuries really destroyed this season. But what has changed, right? They could be tired of waiting. Like, I would be tired of waiting for Zion to figure it out and for Zion to stay healthy. This would offer a relatively easy out. There's not really a top shelf asset, let's be very clear, but Holland and Klitman are, young kids. You don't know what they're going to be. Harris is a solid starter, and both of those picks would be, and that pick would be a pick from a team that's missed the playoffs the last 5 years, so it's not the worst return in the world. Another guy that we've seen thrown around a lot the last couple of years, Trae Young. I don't know if I've ever seen this before, but I was thinking about it, and I was like, you know what? What if we had a couple guards swap spots, like Trae Young and Ja Morant? Listen, the Grizzlies have struggled as of late, right? They just fired their head coach. They haven't beaten a team with a winning record since February 3rd. I'm recording this. It's April 7th. It's been 2 months. Maybe you just want to do a reset, right? Trae Young's durability. He's also an elite scorer and an elite table setter. He might fit better with this Memphis team. They might prefer more of the range rather than downhill attacking. And then for the Hawks, they haven't won a playoff series since 2021 when they crashed the Eastern Conference Finals. They could sense things growing stale. Trae Young has his lowest usage percentage since his rookie season this season. And a healthy Morant can be a game changer. And he's never really had the turnover trouble or the defensive shortcomings as Trae Young. So maybe, just maybe, you might just want the swap. Heading out to a team that I thought was going to rebuild, we're going to talk about Domantas Sabonis. I think, and this is going to be a very, very funky one. Now, I know I talked about Brooklyn shelling out all of their guys. Now, however, there has been talks. Obviously, Brooklyn has a lot of cap space. There has been talks about Brooklyn looking to use that cap space and looking to trade it for guys. I think Brooklyn would be a good fit for Domantas Sabonis if what I'm about to tell you happens. The Kings in this scenario, I think, would get like Claxton, Maxwell Lewis, a couple first-round picks. However, the Nets are looking to try to get Giannis this offseason. I think Sabonis is much more realistic and affordable, and there's got a lot of assets, much easier to pull off. Having Sabonis as a second star and Cam Johnson as the ultimate role player might allow the Nets' next actual centerpiece, whether it's Giannis or someone else, to thrive. And for the Kings, Sabonis is already less than sold on the Kings' long-term outlook, and maybe since 2023, the Kings' office feels the same way. They're probably not going to sign off on a roster reset, considering they just made the playoffs for the first time in like 20 years. But a pair of first-round picks and a young kid in Maxwell Lewis, while also getting Nick Claxton, who can play incredible defense and be that anchor for a team, that's not a bad return for Domantas Sabonis. And next up, we're going to talk about we're going to talk about the final Phoenix Sun on this list. Kevin Durant, the number one guy that's going to be available this offseason. Listen, I've seen him mocked everywhere, but I haven't seen Dallas. I think if Dallas could get him for Klay Thompson, PJ Washington, Jaden Hardy, and a couple firsts, you do it. Here's why. The Mavericks already narrowed their championship contending window by swapping Luka for AD. So you have to be hyper-focused on right now. And listen, there's a lot of red flags, and it's not very bright. But a Kevin Durant, Anthony Davis, Kyrie Irving trio, not a lot of teams are matching that talent. They're just not. And it really might only take one healthy playoff run between those three to justify the cost of the Luka Doncic deal and this swap in this scenario. However, for the Suns, a Durant deal feels inevitable, right? And if Phoenix is keeping Devin Booker, it won't want to tear everything down, to the studs. You need to kind of retool on the fly. You get competitive pieces in a Klay Thompson, in a PJ Washington, a younger piece in a Jaden Hardy. And on top of it, you get the couple first-round picks. Phoenix would have to take on more salary to make this work. You don't know what it would be. So the actual return would be a little bit more than this. I just don't know what that salary would look like from Dallas. But yeah, that's all I want to talk about. At the end of the day, I think this offseason is going to be awesome. The playoffs starting in a week, going to be awesome. I'm actually going to one of the Clippers' last games tomorrow. You won't see this until after that. So hope you guys enjoyed this. Make sure to comment down below who you think is going to get traded and where. Make sure to like and subscribe. And YouTube thinks you're going to like this video. Find out if they're right.